This is a special report from KATC TV3.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jim Hummel coming to you live from the Lafayette Parish Courthouse with breaking news in the state's case against Brandon Scott Lavergne. Just moments ago, Brandon Scott Lavergne pled guilty to murder, 2 counts of murder for both Mickey Shunick and Lisa Pate. This the result of a plea deal with the prosecution that we learned of in court today. It was very emotional in court. The prosecution presented evidence and statements that were signed off by Brandon Scott Lavergne on both the Mickey Shunick case and also the Lisa Pate case. Some of the details were very graphic, very grim, so bear with us as we try and explain what the prosecution was spelling out there in court. As for the Mickey Shunick case, they say that Brandon Scott Lavergne followed her down St. Landry Street, which we saw that photo, that surveillance photo, that last photo of Mickey Shunick. They say that Brandon Scott Lavergne struck Mickey Shunick while on her bike between Dean and Coliseum Road there. That collision threw Mickey off her bicycle. Mickey then entered the Z71 pickup truck, Brandon Lavergne's truck, that white truck, which Brandon Scott Lavergne had a knife on him and also a semi-automatic handgun. During this, there was some sort of altercation, the prosecution said. Brandon Scott Lavergne again signing off on these statements. They say that Mickey grabbed her cell phone, tried to call 911, at which point Brandon Lavergne threatened her with that knife. Mickey then grabbed her mace and sprayed Brandon Lavergne in the face with her mace. Mickey did try to fight him off. The prosecution made that very clear, that Mickey tried to fight Brandon Lavergne off, but again, he was armed with a knife and also a semi-automatic handgun. At which point Brandon Lavergne stabbed Mickey several times, at which point she was motionless in the passenger seat of Brandon Lavergne's pickup truck. At that point, the prosecution and Brandon Lavergne, again signing off on these statements, say that he drove with Mickey's motionless body to a cane field in North Acadia Parish. It's there where Brandon Lavergne told investigators he planned to dump Mickey's body. He was going to dump her body in a cane field there. But at that point, Mickey jumped up, the prosecution said. She jumped up and had regained control of that knife that Brandon Lavergne had and stabbed him several times. But unfortunately, and that's where it got very emotional in the courtroom, the prosecution and Lavergne say that he grabbed his semi-automatic handgun and shot Mickey once in the head, killing her there. At that point, it just got so emotional in that courtroom. The family and friends, they were crying. They had gasped for air at that point. And then the prosecution went through what Brandon Lavergne did after that point. But again, he did plead guilty to the murder of Mickey Shunick and also for Lisa Pate. For the Lisa Pate case, it was interesting to note the prosecution said that they had a number of witnesses from inside prison, some former cellmates of Brandon Lavergne, who were willing to testify against him in both cases. But again, Brandon Lavergne signed off on all of the statements which were presented in court. He admitted to killing Mickey Shunick and also killing Lisa Pate. It was just very emotional, and Mickey's friends are speaking right now. I'm going to try and we're going to catch up with them later. They're going through quite a bit, as you can imagine. You can see Mickey's mom, Nancy, there, and to the front, ahead of all the cameras here, that's Josh Cohen. It's one of Mickey's very good friends. And I could hear him talking as I was kind of talking here, and just going through, I think, what a lot of people thought when they first saw that scar on Brandon Lavergne's neck, that Mickey was a fighter and she may have fought back. And I heard Josh, while I was just talking to you, say that that's what they're proud of, that they think Mickey fought back against someone who is much bigger than her and much stronger than her. She fought back, and I think that that's what the family does want to convey here. But a very emotional day in court here. Again, if you're just joining us, Brandon Lavergne pleading guilty to both the murders of Mickey Shunick and also Lisa Pate. This was a plea deal, which investigators now tell us was cut on August 7th, and it was met under a number of different conditions. First and foremost, they wanted to know where the remains of Mickey were, and that's what Brandon Lavergne led them to on a map. He didn't physically go out to that graveyard out there in northern Evangeline Parish, instead telling investigators on a map that that's where you need to look. They went out there and they did recover the remains of Mickey. Some of the other conditions that were met, he had to go through a mental exam, a psychological exam, which he did, but there were a number of conditions. This plea deal on August 7th, the death penalty, as you remember, was on the table. That is now off the table. Brandon Lavergne was quickly escorted out of the courtroom, where he will be spending the rest of his life behind bars. This is a very developing situation. We're going to try and break this all down for you coming up tonight on Acadiana's news channel at 5 and 6 o'clock. But again, the big headline out here, a plea deal was cut. Brandon Lavergne testified today. He pled guilty to the murders of Mickey Shunick and Lisa Pate. I'm live in Lafayette. Jim Hummel, KATC TV3. Brandon, did you kill Mickey Shunick? Anything you want to say to the Shunick family?
Brandon Lavergne had nothing to say before the hearing. In court, graphic and grim details were revealed on both the Mickey Shunick and Lisa Pate cases. With the Shunick case, it started with that early morning, fateful bike ride home. It's the last image of Mickey Shunick, 1:48 in the morning, May 19th, just after she crossed University Avenue onto St. Landry Street. Moments before this image was taken, Brandon Lavergne was on University Avenue. He was in Lafayette much of the night calling escort services, but when he saw Mickey cross University, he changed lanes and turned down St. Landry, following Mickey on her bicycle. He followed Mickey to the end of St. Landry, here between Dean Street and Coliseum Road, where he hit her. The impact threw her from her bicycle. Armed with a knife and a semi-automatic handgun, Lavergne was able to get Mickey into his truck. She tried to call 911, but Lavergne threatened her with the knife. Mickey pulled out her mace. Mickey was able to get Lavergne's knife, stabbing him several times, wounds that would later be called life-threatening. But Lavergne was able to get the knife from Mickey, stabbing her at least 4 times. She fell over, seemingly lifeless. With Mickey still in the passenger seat, Lavergne then drove to a cane field in northern Acadia Parish, more than a half-hour away, with the intent of dumping Mickey's body. But when he came to a stop, Mickey jumped up, knife in hand. She lunged at Brandon Lavergne, stabbing him in the chest. Lavergne, though, pulled out his gun, firing one shot, hitting Mickey in the head, killing her instantly. Rather than dumping the body, Lavergne then drove to his home in St. Landry Parish, with Mickey still in the passenger seat. Once home, he nursed his wounds, threw out his clothes, and cleaned out his truck. He then drove Mickey to that old cemetery in Evangeline Parish, but because of wounds from the struggle with Mickey, he was not able to bury her body. He instead covered her with branches and debris. And before sunrise, he was already on his way to New Orleans to visit a friend, dumping Mickey's bicycle in Whiskey Bay along the way. While in New Orleans, Lavergne was treated for his injuries at Ochsner Hospital. It's in New Orleans where Lavergne disposed of both his gun and knife. The next day, Sunday, May 20th, Lavergne returned to this cemetery to bury Mickey's body, where it would remain for 80 days. The confession in the form of a plea deal was read out loud in a packed courtroom by lead prosecutor Keith Stutz. When the most grim details were revealed, there were cries and also gasps by Mickey's family and friends. Brandon Lavergne swayed nervously, at times looking straight down.
Do you have anything to say to the Shunick family?
Lavergne again had nothing to say as he left court to serve out 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. But on the other side of the courthouse, despite the heart-wrenching details, those closest to Mickey found some solace that Mickey died putting up a fight.
She went down swinging with every little bit of energy she had left. And she'd have killed him if she could. The mighty Mick.